So in the second video clip for Chapter 11, we're going to start talking more about these infectious microbes that can make us sick. So a little bit more about terminology. Now I mentioned this in the first video clip. A disease is any deviation from health. So that term disease encompasses many different things. We're focusing in on infectious disease in this course. So disruption of a tissue or an organ by a microorganism or their products, so things that they make. And as we'll see as we move through this chapter, sometimes it's not so much the microorganism directly that's injuring us, but something that it is secreting, releasing into the body that actually causes the injury. So that's what's meant by their products. Pathogenicity, that term is just an organism's, their ability to cause disease. So an organism with higher pathogenicity is going to more easily cause disease in a host. Pathogens can be considered true pathogens or opportunistic. So a true pathogen will be capable of causing disease even in a relatively healthy individual with normal immune function. So if you get influenza, for example, is a true pathogen. Salmonella, bacteria, that's a true pathogen because you don't have to be in any kind of state of compromise to develop an illness from those organisms. Opportunistic pathogens, though, not normally pathogens, but they can take advantage of an opportunity, such as if you have weakened immunity or if you have a deep cut in the skin or through a mucous membrane that allows organisms to access parts of the body where they would not normally be able to go. Opportunistic pathogens are a huge problem in healthcare because it's not unusual at all for somebody to go into a medical facility for some sort of procedure and they wind up getting an infection there, and a lot of times those infections are caused by opportunistic pathogens. And finally, this term virulence, that's the degree of pathogenicity, how pathogenic is an organism. And so we'll talk about virulence factors. Virulence factors are a structural feature or something that an organism makes, something that it produces that increase its ability to cause disease, increases the degree of pathogenicity. And that's a pretty broad brush. So anything that allows a microorganism to establish itself in the host, to stick in place, to get around the immune system, to escape the immune system early during infection, or anything that causes damage to the host will increase virulence. And those things that accomplish that are called virulence factors. All right, and as usual, I'm on the previous slide giving away almost everything on the next slide. But what are some examples of virulence factors that we'll be talking about? Many of these things we've talked about already this semester. Structural features like fimbriae, remember those are on bacteria, gram-negative bacteria, those little spikes that attach to surfaces in the body, very specifically usually. Capsules, that's another bacterial feature. Some bacteria have that outer, very organized, thick glycocalyx that tends to protect those bacteria from phagocytosis, from being engulfed by white blood cells. So that's an example of a virulence factor. There are many microorganisms that are pathogens that secrete damaging enzymes. And so if you do that, infectious disease involves injury to the body. And then toxins, as we'll see, and we're especially going to focus in on bacterial toxins. Those are secreted substances that aren't necessarily enzymes that can damage the body in some way, generally by killing host cells, or in some cases they trigger inappropriate immune responses and overreaction by the immune system. So any of those things that we just discussed are examples of things that make it easier for a microbe to cause disease. Now this is a really good figure from your textbook that I like, and kind of the take-home message here is, even with a virulent microorganism, one that is well adapted to causing human disease, there are multiple factors that have to come into place before you're actually going to get sick. And so they're showing you that there are microbial factors that are involved and then host factors that are involved. So on the microbe side, how virulent is the organism? What percentage of the optimal infectious dose were you exposed to? And we'll talk about that soon here in chapter 11. The infectious dose is what number of microbes do you have to be exposed to before you wind up actually getting sick. So it's not like, for most pathogens, you can't just get exposed to one viral particle or one bacterial cell and get sick from it, because your immune system is going to wipe that out. There's a higher dose that you have to receive. Did it come in through the correct portal of entry? It's like influenza needs to come in through the respiratory tract to make you sick. It's not going to enter through the urinary tract. Now on the host side, genetic profile that resists the microbe. So as you guys know, some people are more susceptible to certain diseases than other people, and in many cases we don't understand why that is yet. But for some viruses, for example, there are people who maybe lack the receptor for those viruses to attach to, and that would be due to their genetic profile. And in other cases, it's more subtle than that. Have you ever been exposed to the microbe before? Do you have specific immunity to it? And immunity will be the subject of the fourth unit for the course. So if you've been exposed to it before, you get re-exposed to the same pathogen, you're unlikely to get sick because your immune system launches a massive attack really, really quickly when that occurs. Your general level of health. Are you healthy? Yes. If you're unhealthy, you're going to be more susceptible to various types of infections. I think we all kind of know that. So if you, if you take a look at this diagram, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but they're showing you an example up here. Let's say you get exposed to a microbe with low virulence, so it's something that's not generally capable of causing disease. You get a low dose, comes in the wrong portal of entry. You have a genetic profile that just kind of naturally resists it. You've been exposed to it before, so you have immunity built up against the organism, and you're healthy. You're probably not going to get sick. That microbe is going to pass through the body, and you're not going to have any symptoms. You're not going to ever know that it was there. And so this type of thing is happening all the time. You're constantly being bombarded with microorganisms from your surroundings, and this is going to be the case most of the time. You're not going to get sick from most things that you get exposed to, but, and mainly because they're just not adapted to living on or inside our bodies. And then down here, let's say you get exposed to a microbe with high virulence, a high dose, comes in the correct portal of entry. You don't have any genetic profile that kind of gives you any natural resistance to it. You've never been exposed to it before. Like, let's say this is the newest strain of the flu that's circulating the planet. So even if you're relatively healthy, maybe you have a pretty good state of health, you're going to get sick. That microbe is going to cause disease. And then take a look at these other two cases here, which kind of shows you an in-between situation. And the outcome over here will be that some people are going to get sick and some are not. But take a look at those two scenarios as well. So what does it take for a microorganism to cause an infectious disease? So there are 5 major steps or stages that have to occur. One is, of course, entry. That's just kind of common sense. But there are specific portals of entry, places where microbes enter the body, and then many pathogens have to come in the one particular portal of entry, like the respiratory tract or the digestive tract. Otherwise they're not going to get to the body location where they're adapted to grow. Establishment includes sticking in place. That's the key thing. So if you enter the human body, you can't get flushed out right away. You've got to have features that allow you to stick and remain in a particular location. That's critical for many microbes causing disease. Then you got to survive the host's defenses. You got to survive our immune system, and we'll see that pathogens have ways of avoiding our immune system early on, evading, kind of hiding, or compromising. So many pathogens have weapons that they use against our immune system. Now our immune system is fantastic. So even with pathogens, kind of the general way this plays out is early during infection they have ways of getting around your immune system, but then your immune system later brings out the big guns and can really wipe them out. The problem there is you got to make sure that that pathogen hasn't killed you before your immune system is able to kick in and wipe them out. And that's where these antimicrobial drugs that we take give us another form of weapon to use against them to help the immune system wipe them out from the body. This is critical too. You don't have a disease unless you're being harmed or damaged in some way. And so infectious microbe pathogens have different ways that they damage us. And finally, the microbe has to exit the body, and so it has to survive long enough in your body to be able to get out, increase its numbers, and get transmitted to a new host. If a microbe is not spreading from one host to another, then it's going to peter out, and you're not really going to have an infectious disease that continues on. So any feature of a pathogen that allows it to accomplish any of these things is considered to be a virulence factor, and that's going to be a catch-all term for many of the things that we'll talk about in the next few video clips. So in the next few video clips, we're going to start going through those 5 major steps in more detail and talking about the progress of an infection in a host.